Right. Hi, Shirley. How are you?
Hi, fine.
Right. So finally, we are able to connect for an interview session today. So probably can you let us know some things about yourself, your background, and also how did you started writing?
Wow. Well, I started writing in the third grade. I
Uh-huh.
had wanted to be a poet since I had wanted to be a poet since I first heard the word uttered. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a poet, and I started writing poetry in the third grade. My first poem
Mm-hmm.
was a tribute to my father,
Okay.
and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States. Baltimore was, I don't know what it's like now, but it was a steel working city in the
Mm-hmm.
mid Atlantic states. They made steel. My father was a steel worker. We were blue collar people, and we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
it easy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So coming to your writing journey, something that is very interesting about your writing journey is about your childhood. I believe that you have gone through a difficult childhood. So and I think you've also written about that in your books. So could you tell us about coping with mental illness and how was the experience and how did you come out of that?
It took years for me. You see, I grew up in an abusive home. There was my
Mhm,
parents had a lot of domestic violence going on between them,
mhm,
and I was traumatized as a child. And I'm not doing so well here, but it took a lifetime to recover, to find the right treatment. You see, I
mhm,
believe that I became depressed. I suffered from depression and post traumatic stress disorder and bipolar disorder. And I took a 5 step process to recover, and I write about that process in my book, The Zigzag Path from
mhm,
Hopelessness to Healing. And the 5 steps I took was first to get your spiritual house in order and ask God to forgive your sins. Then I
mhm,
declared my emotional independence from toxic friends and relatives, and I just moved on with my life. Get expert medical help and peer support. Get to know people who have the same problems as you do and get support from them. Get a hobby, use your creativity, go to school or get a job. Do something. Don't just sit there and wallow in your sorrows. Get fit and learn to sit back and enjoy life. Happiness is a learned skill.
mhm. Right. So
That's
um
the book. The book traces my journey from early childhood with the the antagonist in the book is not my mother and my father. It's mental illness. I fought with mental illness for my
mhm,
entire life, and found recovery. And I write about the things I went through, and how I found the light at the end of the tunnel, how I had my born again
mhm,
experience.
mhm. Right. So um writing about your own experiences, how did your family actually reacted to your books? Were they supportive? Like your family and friends, were they supportive, and how did you actually find that strength to tell your own story. Because coming to nonfiction books, uh, people generally do not have the courage to, actually write something that is very personal to their life, to them, and also to their lives. So how did you actually find the courage to, write it all out there?
It was a cathartic experience writing it out. It got the memories out of my mind. You see, the people I write about are passed away. They can't be hurt by my books. The
Mm-hmm.
people who are alive,
Who are alive.
I did not write I did not write about them like I wrote about my parents. You know, my parents are passed away, and uh, I just forgot your question. This
Yeah.
is my first interview, so I'm not going to be good at this, you know.
Right. I'm yeah. So
But they
how?
were not. No, no. My parents were not supportive. My family was not supportive of my recovery. For some reason, they needed me to be sick to meet
Mm-hmm.
some need in them. They needed me to keep me sick. I
Mm-hmm.
had to declare my own independence. I had to take responsibility for my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the writing process, my mother became afraid when I told her I was going to study to become a writer. She says, "You're not going to write about us, are you?" And I thought, well, the first lesson I ever learned in English class was to write what you know, and I'm writing what I know.
Awesome. Awesome. Really. I think it is something that a lot of people actually refrain from doing because they just fear judgment. They fear what society is going to tell. When you actually write something about yourself, it could be something ugly, it could be something very painful. But I think, end of the day, so many people out there choose not to write a non-fiction book just because they fear the rejection, and also they fear judgment. And I'm so happy and I'm so glad that you actually did it. And coming to the response from readers of your books, how receptive has they been so far, and what were the most memorable reviews that you have gotten so far?
Thus far, I've only got one review, and she recommends that book for anybody that suffers from depression, bipolar disorder. It was written to help people define their way out. And depression is so common. I mean, it's much more common than than anybody can even imagine. People will have depression and they'll be ashamed of it, and they'll try to hide it. Um, it takes courage to admit that you need help.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as reviews, I've only gotten the one, and it was a 5-star review.
Mm-hmm. Right. So.
But you know, the Bible says that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and that includes me.
Mm-hmm.
I have made a lot of mistakes, and I just hope
Mm-hmm.
that you see, I believe that a truly wise person will learn from other people's mistakes so they
Mm-hmm.
can avoid unnecessary pain in their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So, um, in terms of reviews that you've gotten, I mean, do you have any close friends who have read your book and find that, useful? Have they actually approached you saying that, they are suffering from the same disorder or the same struggles, and then they find your book useful? So, um, uh, forget about people that you have not seen in real life. How has it been so far among your friends, the ones that you know so far?
Well, my friends are telling me that I need to revise the book and include a little comic relief because the book tends to be a little depressing. And that's exactly what I
Mm-hmm.
plan to do in January, is to revise the book, to develop the chapters, to incorporate new memories, and to make it a more interesting to make it a more interesting book, and a book that can also not just make you cry but make you laugh. So
Mm-hmm.
improvements are coming.
Right.
But the lessons that I learned are already there. The lessons that I learned are already there.
Right. So it is going to be an improved version of the current book, right?
Yes it is. I'm gonna revise it in January. Right now I'm working on a, a poetry chapbook
Mm-hmm.
about my experience with a stalker. I had a stalker once,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm writing about him. I'm writing a series of poetry about this man, and some of the struggles I went through because of this man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. So,
I think that writing,
right,
I
coming to
think that
your books.
writing for me is like self.
Mm-hmm.
Writing for me is like self therapy. It's like doing therapy with myself. When you go to a therapist, all you do is talk. They say nothing. Well, I can talk on paper and figure myself out and solve
Mm-hmm.
my own problems.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because it's more like you are putting your thoughts into paper, or probably putting your thoughts on screen, and you're trying to reorganize the way that you think, so that um, whether or not it helps somebody else. I think this whole writing therapy is actually meant to help you first, right?
Yes, and not only that, it's a way for me to communicate God's love to the world. Because God,
Mm-hmm.
even if my family didn't love me, God did.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like He has been with me all of my life and has been making a way for me to survive.
Mm-hmm. Right. So um
I'm writing my poetry and my books.
mhm,
I'm
right,
writing my poetry and my books to glorify God, to glorify the
right,
Lord. That's why I write these books.
right.
That's why I don't hide my own sins. I don't hide my own sins. I've been forgiven for my sins.
Right. So, coming to publication, um, how did you go about publishing your first book? Was it self-published, or was it, you know, did you take the traditional publishing route? And walk us through the journey of your publication, your first publication.
Okay, that's an easy one. I'm an indie author because I believe that
Mhm,
traditional publishers are celebrity driven, and
mhm,
unless you are famous for something else,
mhm,
you don't have a rat's chance of breaking into the industry. So I just thank God for this indie publishing, that we can self publish our books,
mhm.
and we don't have to worry about the middleman, the editor, whose only concern is his bottom line. He doesn't care diddly squat about art.
Correct.
It's a celebrity driven industry. So I went the
Mhm,
self-publishing route. It takes
mhm,
too much time to get into the traditional
mhm,
publishers.
mhm. And it is also at times it's also costly to have it traditionally published. considering their fees and all that. So, how many books have you actually published until to date?
I've published 4 books and I'm working on a 5th one.
Awesome. Right. Awesome. So, is all your 4 books non-fiction books?
I've written 2 nonfiction books: The
Mm-hmm.
Zigzag Path from Hopelessness to Healing, and another one entitled The Shadowy World of the Poor, which is
Mm-hmm.
about a storefront church and
Mm-hmm.
various kinds of people that attend that kind of a church, and the importance of the lowly
Mm-hmm.
little storefront church to a low income neighborhood. And I've written 3, let's see, 2 poetry, no, 3 poetry actually. I've written 3 poetry books. Poetry is my first love.
Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh. Exactly. So, I'm just curious because since we connected through the June nonfiction author interview, right? So, talking about nonfiction books, how do you actually organize your book? Um, Walk us through the process a little bit for us.
Okay. Well, I don't use elaborate outlines. What I do
Mm-hmm.
is I'll brainstorm. I'll brainstorm the chapter headings and
Mm-hmm.
use that as sort of a an outline, and then I write a first draft in cursive using
Mm-hmm.
stream of consciousness writing. I use stream of consciousness. Whatever words come to my
Mm-hmm.
mind pertaining to the chapter heading, I just write that. Then I'll write another
Mm-hmm.
rough draft in cursive, and maybe a third rough draft in cursive, and then type it on the computer
Mm-hmm.
and edit it. I have never used an editor. Editors are too costly. And I use Grammarly. Grammarly is a good application to check your punctuation and grammar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, um, apart from Grammarly, have you ever tried to invest in a professional editor out there? Have you tried seeking a second opinion from proofreaders or editors?
I was unable to find a beta reader, at,
Mm-hmm.
but as the Lord releases the money, as the money any money I make off my books is going back into the books, into the business,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I will use that money. I will save it up, and when I get enough for an editor, I will hire an editor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But right now, the money
So,
is just not there. The
um,
money is not there.
right. So, coming to the key takeaway message from your
I
nonfiction
had a,
books,
I had a, I
both your books, right? Um, so you were saying something?
well, my message in my books is that mental illness is not hopeless, that recovery is altogether probable, not just possible, but
Mm-hmm.
probable with the
Mm-hmm.
right treatment, and the right attitude by the person who's suffering. It is, it's recoverable. It's not
Mm-hmm.
incurable. It's how you identify. If you identify with a label, you're going to live that label. I
Mm-hmm.
identify as healthy,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and
I think it is more
I'm doing very well.
Awesome. So I think it is more towards how you perceive your struggle, how you actually deal with your struggle. It's not so much about the struggle itself, but it's about how you react towards it, right?
That's true. That's how you react to it. You can't, you see, if you have toxic friends, they're doing drugs, they're pulling you back. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
go on with your life and get new friends. You've got to leave the
Mm-hmm.
toxic people in your life behind and fend for yourself and get a job. Move out of mom and dad's house. Get a life.
Mm-hmm.
So many people get so many people that suffer from bipolar disorder and post traumatic stress disorder, they get emotionally dependent on their families, and that is
Mm-hmm.
not healthy. You have to be independent. You have to take be able to take care of yourself
Mm-hmm.
and find
Right.
your own way in life. And that way you will fulfill the purpose that the creator has for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So,
Use your
interesting.
talents. Use your yeah.
Right. So, interestingly, talking about coping mechanism, what are the healthy coping mechanisms that you have used so far in combating your struggles?
Well, the writing process is a way of coping. That's the number one way. And diet and exercise. If you're not healthy physically, you're not going to be healthy mentally either. So it all
Mm-hmm.
works together. Mind, body, and soul. You have to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Right. So,
And just change the things that you can change, you know, for the better.
mm-hmm.
The things that you can't change, you accept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, um, what would your message be, or probably your advice be, to those who are intentionally creating, or probably intentionally causing hurt to other people's lives? So what would you actually suggest parents, or probably the newer generation parents, to keep in mind when raising their kids, in order to avoid childhood traumatic incidences?
See your child as a human being and not just a smaller version of yourself. That's the
Mhm,
only advice I have to get. That little human being has feelings, and that's a human being there, not just a child, not just a possession. See, in my
mhm,
day, a child was a parent's possession, not as an
mhm,
individual.
mhm,
And respect that child just like you would respect your elders
mhm,
or your peers. Just give the child the same respect you would give an adult.
mhm. Right. Um, so, what are your future plans with regards to writing, apart from poetry books? What are your future plans, and how do you actually plan to expand your writing, or probably reach the public out there with what you write?
Well, I'm going to write about my stalking experience. You see, I believe that voyeurism is a very they don't take it seriously enough. I believe that a voyeur, someone that gets caught stalking women,
Mm-hmm.
peeping in their windows and whatnot, That's a sex crime, and they should have to register like any other sex offender here in the United States. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing this poetry chapbook. I'm writing this poetry chapbook about those struggles, and then I'm going to follow it up with a memoir. The poetry chapbook is going to be called Willy Willy, the chapbook, and the memoir is going to be entitled Willy Willy, the memoir.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be
Right.
a set of books. It's going to be a memoir and a poetry book to go with the memoir.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds very exciting. Coming to your journey as an indie author, I'm sure you have made friends with a lot of amazing indie authors out there, or probably non-fiction authors out there. So, tell us about your online friends, or probably author friends, and how supportive have they been throughout your writing journey?
Wonderful. My online friends have been wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
They have been very supportive, and many of them have had the same experience type of experiences I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Writing seems to be a way of coping with pain, and I think that writers are very empathetic people, and they empathize with one another, and I find them very supportive.
Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. We met online on Dr. Klingbeil's Facebook group. So I'm sure you know how supportive the authors are on Facebook, and also I believe on other platforms as well. So uh, do you actually try reading the work of other authors from the same genre, and how do you actually support them? I mean, have you tried
Well,
exchanging reviews?
right now I'm reading Yasser's book, Three Stories of Love, and it is a wonderful book. And I plan to
Uh-huh.
write a review for him. I also support the dailywisdomwords.com website. It's a Twitter website. And I have read Samantha, I can't pronounce her last name. She's got a French last name, and I'm really not good at French. LeBeouf. I think that's her name. Samantha LeBeouf. I have read her book, Daily Wisdom Words, the ebook. And we
Uh-huh.
just, I do buy books from, and I got some books on my Kindle that I haven't read yet that are written by indie authors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's real
Awesome. So,
important that we read each other's books and write reviews for each other.
uh-huh. Awesome. Right. So, in terms of promotions and in terms of putting your work out there, what has worked so far in selling your books?
I'm using traditional newspaper advertising.
Oh,
I have
cool.
a savings account just for my advertising money. All the money I can save for advertising, I put in this personal bank account. I use my
Mhm,
rewards points from my credit card to build up that account. And when I get enough money for a newspaper ad, I put one in
mhm,
the local paper.
mhm,
Next year, I plan to advertise the zigzag path from hopelessness to healing in the Richmond Times Dispatch, which is the largest newspaper in Virginia, the state of Virginia.
cool, cool. Right.
I
So,
think people trust their
um,
newspapers.
how has
People are
the
more trusting of their
response? Uh-huh, uh-huh.
people are more
So,
trusting of their newspapers, I think, than they are. They get bombarded
mhm,
with ads online. So I think newspaper
Mm-hmm.
would be very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So, speaking about local events, and have you ever tried to host any book signing events where you live, and how has it been so far?
I have only participated in group book signings. I have not had a personal book signing yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So maybe if given a chance, do you see this as an opportunity, probably to sell yourself and also your books where you live? Probably, I think that would create a sense of personal touch in your marketing plan.
My personal touch in my marketing plan, I'm thinking of having my first book signing at the local race car track. It's a very popular venue.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that sees my everyone that sees my books wants them. And the racetrack is a place where local people go and get to know one another and meet new people. And the
Mm-hmm.
racetrack would be a good place. It's a sporting venue, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
festive and a happy place. And I think that would be a unique place to have a book signing, to set up a booth
Mm-hmm.
you just set up a
Right.
table and with a banner.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm
Right.
not. I hope I don't. I hope I'm not coming off too bad here. This is my first interview, so I'm not really good at this.
Right. No, you, it's just us, is just good enough, good enough. And so yeah, oh, do you have any message to tell your readers out there, and how do they actually uh, connect with you online? So tell us about your websites, if you have websites, or probably if you blog, your blog address.
My blog address is on dailywisdomwords.com. I write
Mhm.
about the the the, the masters of the past and present, poets such as Shakespeare, um, Keats, the big poets of yesterday, and the Pulitzer Prize winning poets of today. I write a blog about those people. And
Mhm.
the message I have is that no matter how depraved you get, no matter how
Mhm.
undone you get in your personality, if you have a mental illness, it doesn't matter how low you sink on the human food chain, God still loves you because God's love is unconditional. It's not based upon your behavior, it's based upon His unconditional love and grace for you. And He loves you. God loves you. That's my message. Regardless of
Mhm.
what state you find yourself in, He loves you.
Awesome. So, Shirley, it's wonderful to connect with you today. And I'm so happy to learn about your work and also about your personal struggle. And so happy to interview someone with such a positive vibe like you. And I'm hoping that viewers later will also be able to engage with us on YouTube. They will be able to catch us live right now if they're watching, and also the replay. So there will be a replay
Oh,
for this interview later. I will be giving you the YouTube link, and so I am so happy to have you here with me, and thank you for joining me. So hoping to
thank you.
also connect with you in future. If there's any other opportunities to talk to you, I'll be very happy to uh, be updated about your work. So thank you, Shirley, and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
And thank you. And when I watch the YouTube video, I will duly criticize myself so I can get better at this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Right. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you.